Welcome to the program.
Thank you so
We're
much.
seeing some sort of an implosion within the NASA fraternity. Is it the famous handshake that brought all these problems?
Well, the handshake is infamous to now the Jubilee affiliate parties. But of course, that Harambee House compromise was the last stroke that broke the camel's back with respect to the NASA coalition holding up. And what is obvious, what is real, what is factual, is that this is going to spell doom for most of these politicians. Yes, we have heard even what Senator Wetangula has spoken to. Unfortunately, these happenings bring to fore a couple of very vital issues for consideration. One, today we know very well that the NASA team deposited that agreement with the Register of Political Parties. And after election, it is clear that whatever the agreement that the NASA was predicated on will not hold up to the 5 years or even 10 years as they had anticipated, that now Raila Odinga will support one of their own, that's Kalonzo Musyoka, to ascend to the presidency.
That is not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. But now the critical question arises. To what extent and how useful are political party coalitions before and during elections in the framework of our electoral processes?
Yes.
Because is it just a question of coalitions being formulated for purposes of facing an election, or do they have any political and legislative sense? For example, if they were and they indeed have such kind of legislative or legal sense, then it must hold up to the period
They'll
that it
stay
was
together even
indicated.
after the elections. So once again, in the event Wiper, Fort Kenya, and perhaps ANC pull out of NASA, then that means it's doomed for NASA. NASA will stop being in existence.
Well, we can't say that Ford Kenya and Wiper can pull out, because to where will they be pulling out? They have nowhere else to go. In fact, they've got so much relevance when they're within the NASA framework. Remember, yes, this is a brainchild of Musalia Mudavadi. But even Musalia Mudavadi is at the compromise of the NASA institution, the NASA framework. The moment they pull out, actually they are very frail, as the term frail can be defined. Today, we know very well that the big brother within NASA is ODM. We are going to see the flexing of muscles by ODM to send a very important message to their affiliate members. Now, we have seen the courageous outspokenness of Senator Wetangula on the floor of the House saying that he's going nowhere. But the question is, where is he? Nowhere. If at all, ODM does not hold within NASA. So if at all he is going nowhere and he chooses to remain nowhere, then we know very well that his politics, again, is in the winds.
Now, speaking about ODM flexing its muscle, we're getting reports that there's some interesting development happening in the political scene. And now I'm going to join Khaemba shortly, but not now, of course. I'm going to link up with our senior political reporter shortly. But Javas, once again, Jubilee, the ruling coalition, I'm sure they must be smiling all the way to the bank with regards to this development within NASA. Now that we don't have some sort of a strong or formidable opposition, what does it mean for the country?
Well, the opposition is there, but what we know very well is that Jubilee would easily have prayed, and yes, their prayers have come true, the compromise that has led to the weakening of an opposition voice. Now we remain with the Third Way Alliance of Dr. Okot on the other side, because by this handshake, we know very well that it has brought some kind of brotherhood, some kind of compromise, and fraternal association between ODM, now significantly, and Jubilee. This in itself, in a way, indicates that ODM and even NASA cannot outspokenly chastise Jubilee for a couple of ills or limitations that Jubilee could be having. And that's why now the fear of a lack of a strong opposition is the lot in which we find ourselves as Kenya.
Chavez, hold on to that thought. And speaking about the opposition, I'm now joined by a senior political reporter, Duncan Khaemba, who is at our City Centre studio. Duncan Khaemba, what is cooking out there? We're getting reports that some of the principals, the NASA principals, are in a meeting, right?
Yes, Yusuf, I've just confirmed the meeting has ended. They were in a very early meeting at one of the hotels in Karen, and the meeting has just ended because we do understand why Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka will be flying to Kitui, or will be going to Kitui West to lead campaigns for Wiper candidate in the by-election that will be taking place on the 26th of March. But confirmation is that Musalia Mudavadi, the founder of NASA, Ford Kenya Party leader Moses Wetangula, and Wiper's Kalonzo Musyoka, together with the senior party officials, leaders from respective parties, have held a breakfast meeting this morning just to deliberate on the events that transpired yesterday in the Senate, Yusuf.
Will this signal the beginning of the messy divorce Moses Wetangula has been talking about, perhaps?
Not so sure whether it is the beginning, but of course the writing is on the wall for all and sundry that most probably we are not going to see maybe NASA holding unless something happens. Because remember, yesterday morning there was that breakfast meeting at Pan-Africa Hotel by MPs from ANC, Wiper and Ford Kenya, and they'd actually given their resolutions that if ODM wants to be swallowed or wants to be married to Jubilee, then they have no problem. What they want is ODM to give them space so that the three constituent parties now form a formidable opposition that will now check Jubilee and by extension ODM, because they've said that ODM seems to have crossed over. And then, of course, we saw what transpired on the floor of the Senate with the Ford Kenya Party leader Moses Wetangula warning that the political divorce is going to be messy, noisy, and there will be casualties. Maybe he didn't know that perhaps he's casualty number one, because we do understand that plans are underway to make other changes in the leadership in the National Assembly, which might, which seems to be perhaps targeted at Ford Kenya, and there is talk that maybe ANC might be a beneficiary, because it's all in the name of trying to balance interests here and there. We know that there have been powerful forces in ANC that have been sort of defiant to the leadership of the party, but very comfortable with ODM, and therefore there are those talks that perhaps they might be rewarded as a result of casualty number one, that is Moses Wetangula. But among the issues that we do understand perhaps that formed the agenda was possible expulsion of ODM from NASA. Now, we do understand, however, that one has been put on hold, because we do understand the principals called Raila Odinga last evening to ask him whether he was aware of what was befalling one of their principals in the Senate. And we do understand that Raila Odinga have told them that he was not aware, and it might not happen under his watch, that he will protect his fellow principals of all the parties within NASA. But we know that we are dealing with a political matter, of course, some of the effects of the handshake, and therefore we are not so sure whether that exactly will be seeing the light of the day, because Raila Odinga promising one thing is the other. But you know that the leadership in Parliament, John Mbadi, Minority Leader, the Chief Whip of NASA, and ODM by extension, Junet Mohammed, they have been very vocal on how they would want the parties to progress, given that they have the numbers. So we are not so sure whether that undertaking by Raila Odinga that he will not allow the eviction of Moses Wetangula as the minority leader to stand, if it will come to pass, or if it's now water under the bridge, because clearly that communication might as well have been the last nail that will see Moses Wetangula, a principal, tossed up and down. Yusuf.
Khaimba, I know you have your sources. They were going to know perhaps the agenda of this latest meeting by the Wiper ANC as well as Ford Kenya. We've seen a lot of regrouping and meeting by these three parties, but nothing tangible has ever come out, especially since after that famous, or is it infamous, handshake. One final question, Khaimba. I'm sure you've been speaking to some of the members of parliament from Western Kenya. What are they saying about this, development where ODM is targeting Moses Wetangula?
Yusuf, I can't hear you clearly. Maybe if you can come again.
I'm saying, have you managed to speak to some of the members of parliament from Western Kenya, especially now that ODM is targeting one of their, MPs from the Western Kenya bloc?
Well, we know that I've not heard you clearly, but I think I've just heard something about one of the MPs in Western Kenya slot. But what we know, maybe if I heard you clearly, or if that is what your question was looking at, we know that Vihiga Senator George Haniri, who, by the way, is the longest-serving member of Parliament from Western region that has gone straight terms uninterrupted, by extension, he's the senior most as things stand. Of course, we know that Moses Wetangula and Musalia Mudavadi are the senior most leaders. But in terms of a leader who has been in Parliament for straight terms uninterrupted is elected terms uninterrupted is George Haniri. He's been very vocal and he's differed with the party not once, not twice. We also have former Secretary General and now nominated Member of Parliament Godfrey Osotsi, who also has been reading from a different script. Then we have Kakamega Senator Cleopa Malala, who also appears to be very determined to sort of work hand in glove with ODM, to be specific. That one we saw in the manner in which they went after their party leader Musalia Mudavadi after missing out on the January 30th Raila oathing. And they've actually said that before Raila meets the Mudavadi, Kalonzo Wetangula, they must organize that Kalonzo takes oath and he's sworn in by Wetangula and Musalia Mudavadi be the witness. Those are some of the sentiments that have been coming from ANC leaders. And those are some of the leaders that perhaps, if Wetangula will finally or will be removed definitely, then maybe in the name of trying to balance regional interest, perhaps they might land that reward. Of course, we saw how the cards played out with the Parliamentary Service Commission membership, whereby ANC was supposed to lose a member to Wiper, to lose a slot to Wiper, but ODM had to. So ODM had to sacrifice Gladys Wanga and retain Haniri, who was not supposed to be in that list of Parliamentary Service Commission, for simple reason that Haniri has been having a warm relationship with the ODM by extension within NASA, and therefore that explains. And therefore, if Orengo will take over as the Senate minority leader, maybe we might have either Cleopa Malala being his deputy, or maybe Orengo remaining as the deputy, Malala being the minority leader. That will be, if that is how that particular arithmetic will be put in place, just to balance the regional interest, if at all ODM will make good their threat and remove Wetangula as the minority leader. So those could be some of the leaders that might stand to gain as far as that slot is concerned in the Senate. Or perhaps maybe in the Maasai land, we saw Narok Senator Ledamo Lekina and former ODM chair of elections board, Judy Pareno, who's also in the Senate. So those could be some of the areas that might stand rewarded
clearly,
if Moses
yes,
Wetangula is cleared or is shaken off from the leadership in the Senate.
Yes, Kamba, clearly this is a very interesting political development. And thanks, Kamba, for that comprehensive update. We're gathering that Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, the ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, as well as Ford Kenya leader Moses Wetangula is under siege. I've just ended a meeting that was held somewhere in Karen, and perhaps this meeting comes right after ODM clearly targeted Moses Wetangula, seeking his removal as a minority leader in the Senate. I'm going to have a